There's all that bullshit
Cool.
at the front. So I'm gonna start
Yeah, so
recording.
about
So we've got like
14 and a half.
weird stuff.
Cool. So, getting into the maintenance section, I don't know shit all about that.
Yeah. Well, before we even, so I still want to kind of cover.
No, no, not that I don't. I should say. So,
Yeah.
maintenance. I was thinking maintenance of Part 91. That was stupid. Yeah, maintenance of our drones. I think that's going to be good, and I think it's needed because right now,
I don't think we need to cover this stuff.
maintenance.
I think we should do one just on maintenance requirements, and then I think we should be we're recording right now.
Yeah.
This is all kind of like whatever. I think we'll be able to do one on maintenance requirements.
Mm-hmm. Separately, so we could do a Part 108.
I think we can do it. I think right now we can do one on maintenance requirements and some other stuff, and also talk about the changes. I think we'll be able to cover in 15 minutes.
Changes to
Like Part 107, Part 91, stuff like that.
and how it's going to affect ADSB was what I was getting at.
Yeah, and you can get into it too.
How it's going to affect current pilots who don't even have ADSB and swear by not needing it and it's not a requirement. Well, I mean, it is now. It's relevant information. So yeah, we can. So yeah, maintenance and then changes.
See, when I scroll on this thing, it's because it's like streaming and
yeah, it's laggy.
It's super laggy, so it's kind of funny. Wet leasing, we don't need to cover everything.
Maintain operations specifications. Where was the maintenance section?
Maintenance is kind of close to the end. Or the last few pages.
Let's.
All right, so I think we'll start here. We'll talk about the different management personnel, which kind of says, hey, there needs to be a director of maintenance. And then
management personnel required.
It's on page 16 of 19, so.
Yeah, I got 177. Management personnel required for operations conducted under this part. I'm on it.
All right, so let's get started.
Back at it.
Kind of part two of the 108, part 108 stuff. Part two of part 108.
However, that works its way into the title.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of covered like some basics of it. Kind of going forward again, getting that remote pilot air carrier certificate, number one, is going to bring credibility to the industry. It's going to allow for those cargo drone operations that exceed the Part 107. Like we see like Walmart doing some partnerships and some other stuff. Amazon tried it; they went bankrupt on it.
Yes,
whatever, you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's not quite there yet.
You're not gonna. I mean,
but it's all testing though.
All they can deliver is this little USB dongle.
They can deliver some emergency baby wipes.
Right. So once you exceed that 55-pound weight limit or 54-pound weight limit, it's like.
Then it takes all of 48 pounds to be able to deliver that right now with the current state of batteries, the weight, and all the other stuff. Everything else.
I think this 108 is going to be really cool on bringing that cargo delivery thing into an actual fruition. But there's other requirements, right? So you get an op spec for the, just like under Part 135, you're going to get an op spec, operational specifications. It's going to spell out what you are allowed to do, what you are not allowed to do. And part of that, like under 135, I'm going to pop this up here real quick. Part of that is you're going to have management personnel. So now it's not, you as Don, the Part 107 pilot, can go out and just operate.
Right.
Now you have to have designated management personnel.
Oversee start to finish operations.
So it changes the game immensely, which is kind of neat. So management personnel, let me just read it real quick. Each certificate holder must have sufficient qualified management and technical personnel to ensure the safety of its operations, except for a certificate holder using only one pilot in its operations. So like in your case, essentially. The certificate holder must have qualified personnel serving in the following equivalent positions. So just like a Part 135,
we're going to need a team.
Yep, you're going to have a director of operations, a chief pilot, and a director of maintenance. So
one person could be all three, depending on the size of the operation.
So you can share positions, but again, someone has to be designated.
Right.
In the manual as well as
But for the sake of the 108, let's just get away from thinking one-man team because most of the operations that are going to take place are going to be large-scale deliveries or medium-scale deliveries. Someone orders from Walmart or Amazon or wherever they order from, and it's within the weight limits, they get their whole delivery delivered.
That's right.
So
yep.
I think
So this is for people who really otherwise needed the 135, but the FAA's kind of put the time out on that. We know that from Zephyr. We applied 6 months ago. They said, hold on. And the reason why is because they're coming out with this regulation that's going to be applicable. And so they kind of put a hold on anyone trying to get current certifications.
Gotcha.
So this management personnel, we need to dig a little bit deeper because it starts to spell out what they're really going to be looking for. So here's an example.
And it's not just Bob's my maintenance guy. Tim's my director, and I fly the drone. That's not going to fly. It's got to be certified titles.
So look at this. So director of operations under this paragraph for management personnel for certificate holder. They're looking for someone who, number one, has to have the BVLOS remote pilot certification and must hold the advanced BVLOS remote pilot certificate. So that hasn't been mentioned anywhere else, but we now know that Part 108 is going to now require a new certification for pilots.
Right. It's not going to be an upgraded your class, your CDL and your license. It's going to be a whole new cert.
Right. So this is kind of neat, and then as we also look, they have to have 3 years of supervisory managerial experience within the last 6 years of a position that exercises operational control over commercial UAS operations. Now, again, that's the current requirement. This may be able to be waived, like other stuff,
There's waivers for everything.
There's waivers for everything. So
you've had time in the military. I've had time in the military.
Right. So they may look like, all right, well, commercial UAS operations may not have been around a long time, or like for example, you could use you're already a commercial operator.
Right.
You can use that experience towards it, right? Hey, I'm obviously I've held a supervisor or managerial role. I've ran my own company.
Right.
So now you want to start a new one or get a Part 108 under a business, title. You have the ability to do that, and so that's kind of cool. We'll go back to this, and then we have chief pilot. If you scroll down a little bit here, we have chief pilot. And chief pilot, a lot of the same stuff, BVLOS certificate, and be qualified to serve as a pilot in command in at least one aircraft used by the certificate holder. So if you look at it like director of operations, a little bit higher criteria than it is to be chief pilot. And chief pilot primarily is responsible for training other pilots. That's generally their role, or their role.
Training pilots, overseeing the actual flight, if the operation actually involves a human, as we've seen earlier.
So this is for me the part I want to focus on for this particular podcast, which is to serve as a director of maintenance.
Yeah.
3 to 6 years experience, blah blah blah. First of all, the certificate holder of the aircraft systems OEM, so they have to meet certain qualifications specified by the OEM, the manufacturer. Hold a mechanic certificate with airframe and power plant license, and then have 3 years of experience, blah, blah, blah.
That's going to be the part that's going to hold up. And it won't hold up businesses and corporations that can afford to hire said person. But for smaller businesses who are trying to get into the delivery process, now they got to pay someone who's been doing this for 6 years.
Right, and they've got to pay someone who has the airframe and power plant certificate.
Exactly.
So, as an example, we know that like Delta Airline, their mechanics tap out at $60+ dollars an hour. You got to attract that talent into your business.
Right.
So it's going to impact. Is it going to reduce the impact? Say, for example, of I'm sorry, how do I word this? Is it going to? It's going to impact the actual overall cost to the consumer at the end.
Right.
So if you're doing cargo delivery, and you still got to pay for the same qualifications as you would for man delivery, and the only thing you're saving money on is potentially the fuel cost or the aircraft cost.
Right.
But you're not going to see that carried over from managerial and wage costs because you're going to have to pay the same. I actually like it, most of my background has been the airframe and power plant as a mechanic from the military and then civilian. I like it because number one, it brings true final credibility to the industry from my perspective, from a maintenance perspective. Sorry about that, guys. From a maintenance perspective, it brings true credibility because finally,
there's some weight behind it.
Yeah, you have someone putting their certificate on the line every time they sign off that logbook saying, the aircraft, I performed these maintenance tests.
Right. It brings the checks and balances to it, which again leads to, it goes back to what I said in the previous podcast. it's going to change the industry. It's gonna allow it to be looked at as a viable option.
We've seen it. We've seen it at some of the shows we've gone to where pilots are coming up. Wow, and they just, this is me being a pilot.
Wow, you're not wrong.
Right. Wow,
they have a condescending nature to
it. How do I know that thing's safe just because you said it is? Blah blah blah.
Right.
Well,
this is why
the same guy that turns the wrenches and certifies your aircraft airworthy
now turns ours.
Right. Same guy. You know what I mean? Like, for all intents and purposes. So this is really good news for the industry, I think, as a whole. And again, it brings credibility to the drone and unmanned market, at least from my perspective.
Exactly.
What else do you think about that?
I mean, I just think, again, and I'll say it over and over again, it's going to bring credibility that is much needed. I know that every time that I fly, I check the props, I check the arms, I check the lens, I make sure everything is secured from as it was from factory.
Right. And ultimately, in the end, the pilot in command still holds the ultimate, is the determining factor.
He's going to be your crew
whether the aircraft is there.
Exactly.
However, you as the pilot now have something kind of to fall back on. Is let's say we're not talking about small aircraft.
Oh no, absolutely.
We're talking about a cargo delivery aircraft,
right,
and things like that. So imagine yourself into a scenario where the aircraft delivers 900 pounds of cargo.
Right.
You as the pilot is like, how do I know, as maybe not mechanically inclined?
Right.
I don't know. You know what I mean? I mean, I know you have a strong mechanical background, but other people don't.
Right.
How do you know mechanically that this thing is sound?
Well, you can look off and know that thing's going to stay exactly as it is before takeoff.
That shows that A&P signed off on it, same as that Cessna, same as that citation, same as whatever, right? And so it gives you something to kind of follow. And then if you see something you don't like, obviously don't take your risk, but it gives you kind of something to be like, all right, well, have a little bit of confidence now.
And that's where the years of experience come in. Okay, it's not just someone who's just got out of tech school or college or whatever training course. It's they have prior experience and they know how to turn a wrench. They know how to secure things, and then
it allows for that non-laissez-faire attitude to exist because they're used to working on manned aircraft where there's lives at stake every time it takes off.
Right.
Right. So they have that integrity, they have that honesty, they have that about them. The other part of it too is for you as the pilot, that's maybe not knowing the aircraft. That's where that chief pilot role comes in.
Exactly.
He or she's going to be teaching you that aircraft. That's
what to look for,
how the director of operations is required to have the OEM certifications on that aircraft.
Right.
So the manufacturer's telling you, hey, these are the things to look at, these are the things to blah, blah, blah.
And I think that's going to bring a lot of credibility to some of these, current drone providers that we have. If you buy a Skydio or you buy a Autel,
well, you can't buy a Skydio anymore.
This is true.
Yeah.
But if you buy DJI, if anyone ever has, the manual that's in there is a couple pages on quick setup and contact customer support if there's any issues. As far as any sort of maintenance procedures, there are none.
See, now you're going to see, just like you saw in the Air Force, maintenance procedures, maintenance manuals. You're going to have
technical instructions. You're going to have
depot level. You're going to have this, hey, you can't disassemble this electronic component. They need to go back or whatever. So it prevents those issues from happening. So number one, those are some of the big things with Part 108. Using that information, before we finish up, I want to talk about some of the changes that it brings to the other regulations.
Yes. How is that going to affect the 91s and the 107s?
So, man, is that cutting that off a little bit?
It is.
Let me see if I can downsize this a little bit. That's a little better, right? We'll work with it. But basically, changes to Part 107 expands visual line of sight operations. So
right now,
to include extended visual line of sight. So we know about BB loss beyond visual line of sight, but what extended visual line of sight is simply the use of visual observers to extend how far you're able to go. Right now, that's considered a BB loss waiver process.
Right.
Where you have to get approved for the use of visual observers. Part 107 would be proposed to now include all that in its operations, as long as you know the uncrewed aircraft's location You can determine the aircraft's altitude, attitude, etc. You can monitor the airspace of traffic and determine that the aircrew does not endanger the life of others. And how are you going to be doing that? Through the use of a visual observer.
So you can set up multiple people, however you want to set them up.
Right. So for example, if you had one of those crazy enduro motocross events or something,
right,
you could have people throughout and have that visual observation continued, so you could operate it from one location, assuming you had the aircraft that could do it. So
exactly.
Pretty cool, pretty awesome.
Or events such as I just seen another drone operator here in Michigan. He just reported an event for a canoe race, and it's an endurance test canoe race, and it takes place over a very large area. If he were to take off flying, he'd be able to follow for a longer period of time, get his shots and do his things, have another visual observer set up at different waypoints and stuff.
So right now you have to bog down that waiver system.
Yep.
And so it's kind of nice that they're trying to hold.
It's such a pain,
get away from the waivers, which is really cool.
And I shouldn't say it's such a pain. The waiver process is definitely improved.
Yeah,
it used to be.
It's not terrible, but again, it's time. It's just why not create
one less thing to think about.
Yep, one less thing to think about.
As if the pilot didn't already have enough to think about.
So basically, under Part 107, you can extend it. Use visual observers to get beyond what you normally would have as line of sight, because Part 108 covers the BV loss.
Right.
So now you have all of that, all the visual line of sight rules and regulations incorporated into 2 regulations that you could operate under Part 107.
Cut and dry, read it, it's black and white.
Right. If you're operating under Part 107, as long as you meet the requirements, boom, you're good to go. Say you want to go BV loss, as long as you meet the certificate requirements and this, that, and the other Part 108, boom, you're good to go. So pretty cool. Part 91 changes. A lot of people might be pissed off about this one.
Oh yeah.
But we kind of talked about it in the previous podcast. But basically, BV loss on an aircraft flying under AFR, flight blah blah blah. The big thing that I want to focus on, there's a couple changes with maintaining and each operation. But here's what's cool. Is uncrewed aircraft conduct BV loss and shielded operations have right of way over all other aircraft.
Okay.
Now, what are they going to define as shielded operations? That's yet to be determined. So this
could be type of cargo.
Right.
Whether that be people in the future, or maybe there's hazmat or anything you can think of.
Yep. So that's cool. So essentially now we have uncrewed aircraft having actual right of way over other aircraft in a particular setting.
Before unheard of.
And then we also have uncrewed aircraft conducting BV loss operations below 500. The uncrewed aircraft will, with a maximum kinetic energy of more than 800,000 foot-pounds, must yield the right of way to all aircraft that are equipped with ADS-B out as specified. So now they've incorporated 800,000 pounds of kinetic energy aircraft in this particular.
And that's generally going to encompass your smaller jets, maybe even some.
It's going to be something. Kinetic energy is all based on weight versus speed, right?
It's mathematics,
right?
And I'm not good there.
It's calculators online, folks.
Yeah, give me a program that's going to tell me my kinetic energy.
What's neat is, again, you're seeing 2 scenarios where the uncrewed aircraft is now
gaining that right of way and priority, exactly.
Which is really neat.
And that's gonna, like you said, that's gonna piss.
It's gonna stir a lot of feathers. Just straight up. Because if I say,
well, we're still operating under FAA regulations that have been in place for forever, and it hasn't changed much. Albeit it has a little bit, but it hasn't changed fast enough with the industry. And I think this Part 108 and those changes are finally catching up to create that safe environment for everybody. Which I got to give it to the FAA on this one. They are finally seeing that it's not a hobby. It's not toys flying around.
So some of the other things that they did bring up in that, and again, these are all proposals, so don't take it with a grain of salt.
Right, and nothing in this is set in stone yet.
Right, until it comes out on the electronic code of federal regulations. I'll believe it when I see it.
Right.
But it's nice to talk about. The thing that they're talking about also with this is, if an aircraft like we talked about with the 800,000 pound kinetic energy blah blah blah, and they're flying BV loss below 500 feet, and they have a detect and avoid system and ADS-B out, so we're talking uncrewed, to have all that meet those requirements, they have the right of way.
Right.
Because they have the ability to detect. The manned pilot doesn't.
No.
They're transmitting out, and some of these manned pilots still are not. Right.
And they swear by not having to.
I don't need that. Well, guess what? If
you still might not, but
right. If you want the right,
you better be prepared to hit that brake pedal a little bit. Right. So.
So the last thing that's going to change before we wrap up, guys, we're going a little bit long here, is changes to the type certification process. So we talked about that previous podcast with Matternet and different things, and basically, they had to go through all this basically this process to get the aircraft type certified. And then basically with that, comes it almost acts as intellectual property. But it basically, all other manned aircraft are type certified unless they're experimental, blah, blah, blah. But basically what this is going to do is add a special airworthiness certification for uncrewed aircraft. And so this will likely incorporate, the current ones are primary, restricted, limited, light sport, and then they're going to add the uncrewed. And then we'll have provisionals. There's already provisionals, special flight permits, and experimental. But basically the one that's going to be added is the uncrewed. Now think about that as far as air taxis and different operations like that are coming out. They're coming out with these eVTOLs and uncrewed aircraft. It's opening up a pathway. We've already seen kind of like brief glimpses. I actually believe that the push for this type certification wasn't because of the drones per se. It's because of those air taxi organizations that United has invested billions. Delta's invested billions. Like all these companies have invested billions and billions of dollars into this technology that they believe is going to be the wave of the future. And I agree with them, actually.
Yeah.
Which is why, I'm not going to get into our strategic, things with Zephyr that we're doing, but we're positioning ourselves to be in a position to capitalize on that and be a solution for those providers. But basically, it's kind of cool because they pushed the envelope and they said, hey, you need to develop a way that we can certify these aircraft because we don't intend for there to be a pilot. We're going to start off with a pilot. But we don't intend for them to be piloted aircraft going forward.
And under the current regulations, there's nowhere to fly.
Right.
There's nowhere to test.
And so that's why they're forced to have pilots to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But their intention is they're going fully automated. Probably, I would say category 4 or level 4 or level 5, like we talked about in the part 1 of this podcast, which is pilots out of the loop. Or it's artificial intelligence completely.
Baby steps. Part 3, where we're at now. Part 4 is going to come, and then eventually, let's say maybe 10 years down the road, Part 5 is taking over.
Right.
And you have full cargo and personnel planes taking off and landing, and you might only have the pilot available for the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
And
so for me, key takeaways, big closing thought for me. Big closing thought for me, and I'll turn it over to you, Don. It's basically like bringing in the maintenance requirements, bringing in all these other pathways of certification, seeing that merger of the air taxi, UTM, AAM, UAS, all these different three-letter acronyms, all kind of coming together as one industry has
finally figuring this shit out.
I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Mm-hmm.
We know the technology's there, and it looks like regulations are now working to kind of catch up, which is great. Remember, FAA has to keep the airways safe for all people, and that includes someone flying the 1920s Wright Flyer out there.
Good for them.
So, you know what I mean? Like, it's got to be safe for all people who want to have the sky above our national airspace. So they have a tough job. I'm critical of them all the time, as you know. But I have substantial money invested, so I want to see this. But yeah, with that, I think 108 is going to be awesome. I hope we get to see it come early 2024. And what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think everything that's proposed in here, minor changes here and there, the things that are going to be improved upon, things that might be taken out. Only time will tell. But from what I've seen, mechanics and changes in regulations, changes in type certifications and certifications in general, it's going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I'm, like I said, I'm excited to see where it goes to and how it unfolds for each individual scenario.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Cool.
With that, guys, we'll see you on the next one. And like, subscribe, share, and throw some stuff in the comments. If there's information you want us to cover, let us know. You know what I mean? Like,
definitely let us know.
We got to start somewhere, and we think this proposal is kind of it's not recent news. It is important for people to understand what's coming in the future, so they can better position themselves and prepare, like for you and your business and things like that. So with that, guys, we'll see you. See you on the next one.
Yep. Take care.